Hey YouTube, Womcat back for the state of professional wrestling part 3. Now I've got a notebook in my hand here, and this is not a script. These are bullet points because I feel like I was a very long-winded in my first two videos, so I'm going to look down at my bullet points to stay on track and not go on and on about things. So just know that I'm not reading a script here. The last thing I ended with, excuse me, on the downfall of the NWA and the greatest time in the glory days of the business. I wrote a little thing about that, and me blaming Jim Crockett for ruining professional wrestling forever. I'm going to clarify that. First, I want to just say real quick, I want to explain my opinion and a lot of other people's opinions, because I've watched a lot of shoot interviews and what a wrestling match really is. Well, you know, there's a start, there's a middle, there's a finish, and there's number one, you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to talk the people into the arena. Now, people like Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, people like that could talk people into the arena. Basically, a good wrestling match is called in the ring. Now, most of y'all probably know what that means. Those who don't know what it means, that they backstage, the two opponents, they talk about only the high spots, and those are the spots that are going to be the really big bumps, the really big moves, stuff like that. And the rest, they basically just whisper to each other, and they listen to the crowd with their third ear, and that's a gift. You either have it or you don't. And these guys in the glory days of the NWA had it, and they could do it. But you listen to the crowd, you give them what they want by listening to them with your third ear, and then there's the high spots. And when it comes to a wrestling match, a pro wrestling match, less is always more, because the less you give them, the less high spots you give them, the more special those high spots are going to be, whether it be a chair shot or a thrown out of the ring, or stuff like that, where people say, oh my gosh, that must have really hurt, stuff like that. I'm going to look back down at my notes again real quick. I'm still talking about, and you've got to know how to work. You've got to know how to work the crowd, which I just explained, working the crowd. And you've also got to know how to sell. When your opponent, basically when the heel starts bullying the babyface, the babyface has to sell. It hurts, I'm in pain, I'm in trouble, to set up that big comeback. Now, does that lead to the babyface winning every time? No, it doesn't, because back in the day, they weren't there to make you, quote, to make the whole arena happy. They were there to work you. And that's the way professional wrestling should be. It's a work. And you suspend reality when you're in that arena, or you're watching a pay-per-view, or you're watching it on TV. You suspend your belief, and you get into it, just like a TV show or a movie or anything like that. Okay, I hope I explained that. Okay, let's get back into Jim Crockett ruining professional wrestling. Well, like I said, it's a very hard statement for me to make, but basically what I said on my second video is Jim Crockett in the late 80s knew he had something special, and he did. He had something very special, but he overspent. I'll just say it one more time. He bought new headquarters. He bought airplanes. He bought limos, and he spent. And one of the big things that happened, Dusty Rhodes came up with the concept of Starcade, and the first Starcade was in 1983, a Flair for the Gold. And it was absolutely huge. And at the time in 1983, the tickets sold so fast because it was in Greensboro. Like all Starcades until '87 were in Greensboro on Thanksgiving night. And this one was so big that it sold out that me and my part of my family had to go to the convention center to watch it on closed circuit TV. It was so big. It was Flair versus Harley Race. It was Flair was going for his second world title, and it was in a cage, and it was huge, and it sold big time. Well, okay, Starcade '83 through Starcade '87 were all held in Greensboro, with the exception of one of those years. They had like a split between Greensboro and Atlanta, and that was the year that, and I want to say 1985, that the iconic I Quit match happened between Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard, and it was just brutal. It was off the chart brutal. So fast forward to 1987, all of a sudden the fans in my area, in the North Carolina area, we are informed that Starcade '87 will be taking place in Chicago on Thanksgiving night. Starcade '87 Chi-Town Heat. That didn't go over, folks. It didn't go over whatsoever. It was bad. It was real bad. Jim Crockett thought that he could take his brand, and the granddaddy of the wrestling year was Starcade. And people from the Triad area, from the Greensboro area, from the Winston area, whatever, were pissed. And the show did not go over in Chicago at all. What Jim Crockett did was he started going to places where Vince was over already. The WWF was over, and the shows, they didn't work, and he was losing money and losing money and losing money. And people were trying to tell him, this is not working. We need to go back to the same places: Baltimore, Greensboro, Winston, Raleigh, all these places that were proven that they were going to sell out, and he wouldn't listen. I'm just going to look back at my notes just for a second. Yeah, okay. Chi-Town Heat. Okay, I just want to turn the page here real quick. Now, fast forward from '87 to '88. Jim Crockett had bankrupted the Mid-Atlantic area, literally. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm a smoker. He had bankrupted the Mid-Atlantic area and the NWA, and in 1988, Ted Turner bought Jim Crockett Promotions from Jim Crockett and the NWA. And from now around '88 and '89, I started losing interest in the product, but I would watch it from time to time. But subsequently, over the years, I've looked back and seen different wrestlers' perspectives on what happened in '88 and how Jim Crockett really messed up. And that's why I make the statement that Jim Crockett in my mind, ruined professional wrestling. No disrespect to Mr. Crockett. I don't think he was doing anything in malice or anything like that, but he just he made a lot of mistakes. Well, from 1988, when Ted Turner, who owned the Superstation, bought the NWA, they started going through managers after managers to run the company. And I'll only mention one, a man named Jim Hurd, who was a bigwig or a CEO or something at Pizza Hut. He was hired to come in and be the CEO of WCW. Didn't go over too well, folks. It was really, really bad. And Jim Hurd got fired, and they would hire this person, this person, this person, that person. Ole Anderson was hired, and it was the most rinky-dink thing. It was horrible. It was terrible. It was so bad. In 1994, through a lot of people's advice, including Ric Flair's, management was urged to hire a guy named Eric Bischoff to run WCW, which at the time was a very, very good idea. Bischoff came in, and I'm not following a script, I'm looking at my bullet points. He subsequently hired Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Mean Gene Okerlund, Bobby Heenan, which of course they were the enemy, but still, it was interesting. I'm not a Hulk Hogan fan whatsoever, but it was interesting. Macho Man, God rest his soul, I was a fairly big fan of his, but still he came from the enemy. But anyway, it was very interesting to see Hulk come in and Macho and all these people, and they announced that there would be they were going to go up against Raw on Monday night with a show called WCW Monday Nitro, which debuted, I want to be sure about this, September 4th, 1995, from the Mall of America in Minneapolis. Like I said, I saw the advertisement for it, and I was dead on it. I had to see what they were going to do, and the show went totally over. I mean, it was exciting from beginning to end. Lex Luger showed up. Nobody knew it because, the internet was not like it is now, nowhere close to where it is now. Lex Luger had defected from the WWF at the time, and he just walked on the scene, and the announcers went crazy, the fans went crazy, I went crazy. I'm not the hugest Luger fan in the world, but still, he was a star, and it was great, and the show was totally over. Over meaning it went over as a very, very good show, and it just built and built and built off of that show, and WCW Monday Nitro was just on fire. Now, along about 1996, that's when Hall and Nash, the Outsiders, they quote defected, because the internet was not huge at the time, and that they actually could keep secrets. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall came over, and they would walk through the crowd, and they would bully people, and they'd do that. And me, like everybody else who was watching, is like, what's Razor Ramon and Big Sexy? I can't remember the name of his character. Kevin Nash, Big Sexy. I don't remember the name of his character. It doesn't matter. But everybody knows Hall and Nash were the Outsiders when they came to WCW, and I mean, they weren't the Four Horsemen. Don't get me wrong. No, nothing can ever come close to that. But at the time, it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And buddy, I'm gonna tell you right now, it looked like a shoot. Um, it was exciting. It was spontaneous. It was like anything could happen, and they presented everything as real in '96 when the Outsiders came in. And then of course after that, Eric Bischoff was, Roddy Piper exposed him as the leader of the NWO, and it was just like basically like a soap opera, but still art to me, because everybody was doing everything right, and the ratings were through the roof. I loved the show. It was just crazy. And on Monday night, you better not call me on Monday night, because I was all about some WCW Monday Nitro. And things went well for a long time. A lot of people made a lot of money. Some people got screwed, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but there were some guaranteed contracts there. There was a lot of stuff that went on that should not have gone on, but still the show was hot. Don't get me wrong. And I'll just skip ahead to Goldberg. Goldberg came in, and they pushed him to the moon. They pushed him to the moon, and it worked. And then things started getting so diluted. It was like everybody in WCW was a member of the NWO now, and it was just way too big, and it wasn't working anymore. And they would try a lot of stuff, and I was still very interested in the show. I watched it every week, but about 1998. Things started going very downhill for WCW for a lot of reasons, and a lot of y'all out there know the reasons, maybe even better than me. A lot of bad decisions were made. These guys like Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Macho Man, they all had guaranteed contracts. They wouldn't show up for house shows. They wouldn't show up for. They had a second-rate show that they started called Thunder. Everybody probably knows about that. None of those people would show up for Thunder because it was, quote, beneath them and all that. And they spent and they spent and they spent and they spent, and they just kept getting deeper and deeper into a hole. And I'm just looking at my notes again. I may have to back up here a little bit, but I can't remember the year that Bret Hart was hired. It was the year of the Montreal Screwjob. It may have been '98 after the Screwjob in the WWF. But Eric Bischoff hired Bret Hart, who did basically nothing for the company. He drew no money. And I'm not blaming Bret Hart. I'm blaming management. He was completely handled wrong, and it absolutely did not work. So basically, Eric Bischoff got fired, and they brought in Vince Russo, the head writer for the WWF during the Attitude Era. And I don't want to use the word, so I'll say what a cluster freak that was. Did Russo try? He tried real hard. He did. I got to hand it to him. But it didn't work. It absolutely didn't work. And WCW was just in shambles. It just in shambles. Looking at my bullet points again. Basically, I'll just fast forward to 2001. And I remember that morning, Monday morning in 2001, I went online to go to WCW.com to see if I could find out something about the show. that night, and it's basically said that Vince McMahon had bought the WCW. And of course, that night was the end of WCW, and that's when they did the final show. It was called Night of Champions, and it was something at the beach. I can't remember. It was a very forgettable show, but of course I watched it because it was the last show, and it was a very big shock that WCW was over with. And the last match on the card was, and Ric Flair says this himself in his book, that he had not wrestled in 6 months. He was not in shape, but they put Flair and Sting, the icon Sting, as the quote main event, the last match of the night. And Flair came out with a shirt on because his physique had gotten so bad, and the match was just terrible. So I hope I didn't go too fast on this, but I didn't want to linger on and on like I think I did in my last 2 videos. So that will conclude part 3, and part 4, I want it to be the last video I make, because I want to go through the end of the post WCW era and what happened with the WWF, which eventually turned into the WWE in 2002, if that's correct. I'm going to talk about that, and then I want to really start talking about what's going on today. Eventually get to what's going on today, and that be my final say on the state of professional wrestling. So this is video number 3. I think when I come back on video number 4, that should be my last one. Thank you, YouTube. I appreciate you listening to me. This is Womcat. God bless you all, and have a good night, and goodbye.